Thank you to attend this webinar on the Keybotics project. So today the webinar deals with how to address a Cobotic project. I will start with the presentation of the Keybotics project and the consortium that pushes this project, and then I will switch to the presentation of the experts, the speakers of today. About the Keybotics project, so the Keybotics project is a project funded by the EIT Manufacturing, co-funded by the EIT Manufacturing and the European Union. The goal of this project is to propose a Cobotic solution oriented towards complex surface finishing tasks and implement this Cobotic solution to decrease the drudgery at work and increase both the productivity and the well-being of the workers. So today, we will see the different tasks a bit later, but the state of the art is that some tasks are executed manually, especially the surface finishing operations, and this induces some problems in terms of safety and ergonomics. We have some posture issues, so that's the first aspect. And then we have also productivity issues, as a manual work by definition is not constant in terms of quality. We can have fatigue, and the operator can lose the efficiency as the task is long-lasting with heavy loads. So to respond to this state of the art, the Keybotics project proposed to displace this intensive manual labor towards collaborative robots. This project is driven by a certain number of institutions and companies. We have the CEA and EasyBoat, who are the solution makers, and especially EasyBoat, who is the business owner of this project. We have LISI Aerospace and Vestalpine. So LISI Aerospace is an aeronautical company based in France, and Vestalpine is a metallurgical is a company that works in the field of metallurgy in Austria. So here we have the two end users. And then Amatec. Amatec is the integrator of the solution for the Austrian side. For the French side, it's GB2 with the EasyBoat. And we have Aerospace Valley, which is the competitiveness cluster that is in charge of the project management. So the topic today, so we talked about the Cobotics and the automations. Nowadays, we have three types of automations, namely the specific machines, robotics, and cobots. Today, the topic will really be the Cobotics, and the webinar will be segmented in two sections. The first being how to define a Cobotic project. What is the Cobotics in today's definition, and then how we can implement a Cobotic project. And I attract your attention on the last point of this slide. There will be a second webinar after this one on the 28th of October, so really soon, 1 month away, that will deal specifically with industrial applications of Cobotic solution. So save the date. It will be very interesting to see industrial use cases at this occasion. Let's move on the presentation of today's speakers. So here are our two experts. We have Catherine Bidard, who is a senior research engineer at CEA List Institute, especially in the interactive robotics laboratory. And then we have Max da Silva Simoes, co-founder and chief technical officer at EasyBoat. As I mentioned, EasyBoat being the business owner and the maker of the solution. And myself, nice to meet you all. I am Sasaki Laila. I work at Aerospace Valley in the Bordeaux office in France. So what I propose now is to leave the floor to our first speaker, Catherine Médard, who will explain more in details the definition of cobotics nowadays. So, Catherine, I will leave the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Sorry, I have some problems with the switch. Partage. Changer de présentateur. Catherine Médard. Okay. Now the floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hello. So I think you are seeing my slide. I just have to see myself. Okay. So in this seminar, I will start with the definition to know what is collaborative robotics and cobotics. So if I start from there, we know the usual industrial robotics where the robots were fenced. And then now more and more we go to removing the fenced when it's possible, which we call shared spaces. And you could go up to sharing the task, or even to go to system where the human is completely driving the manipulator or robot. So this part we will mostly deal with today. We will the current usage, especially commercial one, is to start the word cobot with as soon as you can remove the fence. Initially, the term cobots was in a much more narrow definition. It was even some kind of a specific load handling system using some robot technology. In our lab, we tend to call cobots when you have a continuous physical interaction, so really load handling or force amplification, and the human is completely controlling. So we use this word when there is no autonomy, and we switch to more collaborative robotics or robots. The robot has some level of autonomy. But today we will put all this in the same in the same discussion, knowing that it's a large evolving field. Of course, we have the same kind of techniques, discussion and evolution in mobile robotics, and most of the things we will tell could also apply to some mobile robotics application, but the more developed are more on a robotics arm and our experience. So one thing to clarify a little bit and to have some common word, in France, there has been several years of meeting discussion organized by the French Labor Ministry, who edited a prevention guide for user of collaborative robotics. And so they define different modes of collaboration, let's say. So they would define coexistence, that the criterion is that you share the space, the human can enter the space where the robot can go. You can have indirect collaboration, means that at some point the human and the robot will work on the same object. And direct collaboration will be that they do the task together at some point. So there is over definition. So I put one of my German colleague in a publication. You see, it's about the same definition with a little bit different words. And finally, another one is when you have a physical contact, which is completely intended during the task. So that in the French ministry guide we called physical or gesture assistance. So what happens is that it's very possible that in one application you can use different modes. At some stage, You could have a direct collaboration or even physical assistance. And you could also imagine you leave the robot do some work by himself alone, and then you switch to a coexistence mode. So in the application design for collaborative robotics, it's an important stage to define what the robot will do, what the human will do. So I can say like that. An other important vocabulary that there are some terms defined in the norms, in the standards. So especially in ISO 15066, but this will be also included in the new standard for industrial robotics, which are, I call it feature because it's not clear. Sometimes it could be seen as a safety function. It can be wider. So the four pillars, let's say, are: one, in industrial robotics for collaborative application, are a safety rated monitor stop. This is now extending a lot. It's just the fact that the robot could stop and restart very easily, and be sure is stopping, so he keeps the power and is monitoring that he's not moving. So power and force limiting, speed and separation monitoring, and hand guiding. I will go more in detail into these three features. So power and force limiting, so this feature is used when looking at especially unintended contact. So that means you are working fenceless, and there could be, from your risk analysis, a risk that there is a kind of a collision or a contact more or less fast between the robot and the human. So the idea is that you have to limit the contact energy, the force, and the pressure. So there are some thresholds that have been proposed in some standards. You know that they are kind of informative, but still they are in the standard. And what is important to know is that this is very depending on the contact configuration. So if the human body is not free to move, can be clamped by the robot, it's usually much more dangerous than when the human body, okay, can be touched by the robot, but can move back. But the value of the force you get in this situation is depending on this contact configuration. It's also depending also a lot on the configuration of the robots. And in addition, the threshold in this standard are depending on the body part you are touching. So it's make a lot of parameters. And one difficulty is that you have to identify the configuration where there is such risk, the more dangerous one, and even go to test or compute it. So how this feature is achieved is also one thing that make it a bit complex, is that usually you will use a combination of solution. So if people said you, I am selling you a P robot with PFL, there could be something related to intrinsic design, just having round edge not to hurt people, having low inertia. You can have some passive solution like padding, cushioning, or introducing some switches in some case when you have possible dangerous contact. So switches even in the end effector or any places. The behavior of the robot is also depending on its control. So usually you will have some, the idea is to have at some point a control that is not too rigid, as industrial robots usually are position control with high accuracy. That means they are very rigid. So this compliant control can be based on force sensing or on backdrivable actuators like EasyBo has. And then there is also something depending on the control, how the robots detect the contact and have some reactive behavior and is not continuously pushing against you. So all these things, when this is not enough, then another solution is to limit the speed in order to limit the force and the pressure. So a second feature is hand guiding. Unguiding is quite well known now for being used for teaching, programming the robot. So using it just for the programming. It can also be used during the task. So what we call the co-manipulation. The robot will carry pieces and you are moving with him. There is an example from my German colleague, even with quite heavy robot, it's still possible. Another kind of unguiding, which is not well known, that it has emerged in US a long time ago, but there is not much industrial application, and CEA has done several in this field, is working with force amplification. In this case, the operator is defining the direction of movement, but the robot is helping him. So in the direction the operator is pushing, for instance, 1 kilo, the robot could push 10 kilo. So it's what we call force amplification. So all these features, this unguiding function, how it's realized by the robot, it's basically some kind of force control in all cases. So usually we mix the force sensing solution or backdrivable actuators, and the robot need to have some model-based computation to do some feed forward, for instance, compensate for its own weight in order that the operator don't feel it, or compensate also for the load and so on. Another collaborative features is called speed and separation monitoring. So its definition has evolved a little bit, but it's just a bit more precise in the new draft of the standard, is to maintain a protective separation distance between the operator and the robot in a dynamic manner. So usually it's realized using some system either already included in the robot, but most often external systems. So optoelectronic system, you will know light curtains, laser scanners. You can also use some safety mats on the floor to detect the presence of person, and are also used a lot of vision systems. A basic difference with the common actual state of the art is that the optoelectronic systems are usually compatible with functional safety performance level. So that means that they have a performance level that is quite high, and they have also the electric wiring that allows for instance, having some redundancy. So they get a PL level requirement, which usually in industrial robotics you have some by the standard you are kind of asked to have a quiet level, a PL level, PLD. So all the optoelectronic system usually can give you that. The vision system for now, they don't reach this requirement. So you will see some application when then you need to have both. So you will use vision system, but this is kind of a soft safety because you cannot get the highest performance level. And then you need to add some other system to stop in case this one is not working. So it's still a bit difficult to put in place. And the separation distance must take into account the robot speed. Usually you also have to take into account the operator speed. There are discussion about that. It seems between the mobile robot standard and the ARM standard, and the stopping this time and distance. So what that can happen is that you want to have an application like that, and if you don't check that early enough with the typically stopping time and distance of your robot, you could end up to have an application that is not effective. So that means you need too large distance. So now if we look at the safety and certification, it's just something very general about this in machinery generally, so in industry, and it's applicable also in a lot of other fields. but for instance, not specifically the medical one where you have over regulation. So what is important to remember if you are not in the field is that the machinery directive is like a law. It's a directive and it's transposed into law by our government. So its application is compulsory. What the machinery directive is giving is principally some what we call essential health and safety requirements. So they are quite general requirements, and this directive is really important and mandatory. You cannot expect not to follow except in very specific field. And the standards, so one thing to remember is that they are not mandatory, they are completely of voluntary use. Also, they are written by voluntary person from different field, industry, user, and so on. So they define some technical specification. And another important thing is that for harmonize, the term of harmonized standards means that some standards, even published by international committee like ISO, are double checked by EU to check that they give a conformity with the machinery directive. So these kind of standards are very important. So they are not mandatory, but in case you are completely in the scope of the standards, it's really better if you can follow them. And in case you cannot follow all is asked in the standard, you really need to have good argument, good reason not to follow. So it's really a basic. So just a note that you may have to follow other directives, but the safety of the robot, and especially in cobotics, is really depending on the machinery directive. Another important just summary to apply machinery directive, there are two important things. One is that there is what is called a safety integration principle. It's just the fact that you try as much as possible to eliminate the hazard at the root. So this is including inherent safe design, what we would call in robotics. And yeah, in case you can replace completely a dangerous process, you can do it. Then what is not possible, not easy to eliminate, then you will have what is called technical safeguard, where you have basically in robotics mechanical safeguard and engineering control safeguards, what we usually call the safety function. And what is not possible there, then it must be not too much. You can still rely on some training of the operators, on some notice. So there is possibly some residual risk. And at the last solution, you have a personal protective equipment like an helmet or something like that. And another important point in applying machinery directive is that you have to do a risk assessment and risk reduction. There is standard to explain you how to do it. It's basically an iterative process, and as soon as you detect a risk, you have to evaluate, is it acceptable or not? If not, you have to find solution and then reassess the risk when you include new solution for the safety. So what is important now in the field of, let's say, robotics, especially for manufacturing or in these things, is that it is a robot integrator with the person who is designing the application of the robot. So what we call usually cell when it's closed, but the robotics application, how the robot is controlled, how it's programmed, where it is, which tool it has. So this is really the integrators, and it is the integrator that is responsible for the machinery directive. So he put this CE marking, which means that he has done the work for following the machinery directive. The robot manufacturer is quite not so much involved. He has to do some CE marking, for instance, for electric risk or things like that. But the robot is selling you. So if somebody sell you a robot and tell you it's a collaborative robot, it's a cobot, it's very safe, you can take it. in fact, he cannot say how it is safe because he don't know what you are going to do with it. So what this concept in machinery directive is translated into the fact that the robot is considered as a partly completed machinery. So it's not a machinery by itself. So they provide the declaration of incorporation, and of course they would be able to provide you safety function defined by the standard and a lot of things that could help for the integrator to ensure the safety, but is not really responsible for the safety. So it's really the integrator, and then the user company has to basically is responsible for the health of this worker. And what is important is that it's receiving operating instruction and maintenance instruction from the integrators, and they have to follow that. In addition, if there are some organizational measures or even some training or protective equipment, of course, the user company has to ensure that. But the main responsible for safety is the robot integrator. Yes, so I am finished with this part, and I will let Isibo talk about how to address a cobotics project.
So thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, now I will leave the floor to Max da Silva Simões, who is the Chief Technical Officer at EasyBot, as well as the co-founder.
Thank you, Leila. Maybe I can get the screen also, please. Thank you, Catherine, for these definitions also. It's always interesting to have reminders.
Yes, Max, so the screen is okay now.
Yes. So this webinar is about how to address a cobotic project. As said, I'm co-founder and Chief Technical Officer at EasyBot, and we will speak in this first part of how to handle your project. What are the main questions you should address? The first question is, why are you trying to automate your process? What are the needs and constraints for your applications? First of all, usually it's to improve your productivity. But for what? Is it to produce more with the same staff because you have currently on this process a bottleneck? Or is it to produce as much but with less staff, or eventually to produce with different kind of staff? For example, for disabled people maybe, or women that could not manage this kind of work. Woman is a bit, it's not feminist, let's say, sorry. You can also want to preserve your human resources. It means protect your operator from pain, protect operators from eventually dangers, or improve the attractiveness of the job. You may also want to improve quality. Is it to maintain the same performance along all day, or maybe to improve traceability? And among the main topics used, maybe it's also to improve your image or the image of your company, like showing innovation strategy or using cutting edge technology. Industry 4.0 is very, let's say, in the definitions is very present. Next point, sorry. What do you want? Pardon. What is the operation to automatize? You should check what are the protagonists. You have, of course, the operator. You should focus on its qualifications, the training time, How long did it take him to get the job? Is it an exchangeable people? That means that you can hire a new one in a few seconds, or it will take years to get one productive operator. Then you have what are the tools he is using. Is there a lot of tools present, and were they personalized or customized, for this application? And of course, what are the consumables you are using? Their lifetime, their performance, their price. You should check also the task and time decomposition. What does it mean? Usually, you handle a product, you process the product, and you check your product. These are the 3 steps. For these 3 kind of steps, and you can mix many of them, how long does it take for each step? And what is the qualification required for this? Last point, you should check also what is the flow, what are the inputs and what is the outputs. It can be just what is just the packaging of this information, or what is the quality required for these inputs or outputs. It will influence the whole system. And as it is shown here with the before and after, take a look at a wider picture. Maybe it's not just the process, this part of the process that needs to be automatized. Then you have to prepare your automation project. What does it mean? It's gather a state-of-the-art or upgrade your state-of-the-art. And it means, let's say, ask to your providers. The providers can be the providers from your parts, from your tools, from your consumables, any provider that can bring you more information about what he has already seen. It can be also expertise centers. CEA, for example, is an expertise center, and they will explain this for you in a moment. It can be also customers, because your customers may have considered other suppliers and have information on what is done. And of course, your competitors, if you can ask them, of course. Another question you have to ask yourself is, does similar automation exist? And at this part, what is the automation level? As explained Catherine, we can be from the full automated mode to just, or not just, but a full assistance mode, where the operator has just some additional assistance. And these solutions, what are the benefits and limitations for your own needs? You should check what is the complexity of each of these steps and should be analyzed as steps. What is the maturity of them? Is it, as explained Catherine, is it some video surveillance and it's only maybe a support or soft function? Or is it a high performance level for them? You should check also what are the gains for you for each type of the propositions, and check also the new bottlenecks on your workshop. And of course, does it suit to your needs? Maybe the solution is already present. Now let's talk about the cobotics. And cobotics is bring the right place for the mankind in the shop floors. It's my opinion, let's say. Let's see how or why do I think about this. Automation shall not only be full automated or factories without operators, roboticians programming without process knowledge, nor operators serving machines. Instead, we should introduce an operator in the loop because he will bring pragmatism and agility to the automation. We can, let's say, focus on the human intelligence or the operator's intelligence instead of just the artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is improving, or it's very modern concept, and it's really new and cutting edge. But at the moment, human brain is, even for the dumbest operator, is the more efficient. And the aim is to have operators focused on their know-how and the cobots serving them. That's the main objective. And we will have some more information about that, the advantage of the human robot, in the next webinar next month, as Leila proposed. This will also lead to new challenges about the quality achieved. Was in fact, the manual process hides a smart human in the loop, and it corrects many things in the process, many uncertainties in the process. And you will have also to evaluate what is the advantage brought by the state-of-the-art tools or consumables. Sometimes it makes the difference, even without going to automation. There is also a challenge about safety, not just safety, but keeping the productivity. It's easy to put fences, but if you can't put them, how can safety be granted? The risks from the robot, not from the robot, which are the impact on collision, the crash when the force is applied by the robot, or the puncture when because of the offending edges. There is also the risks of your own process. A brushing system may be already dangerous, but also the fact that the process will be used unmanaged or unmanaged by an operator. It will be automatic. Another challenge is acceptance. Will the operators accept this robot or this cobot in their factory? You have to involve them all along the process, think about the ergonomics of him, and evaluate the whole system to gather feedback. And of course, the last but not least, the return on investment, and I will speak about it a bit later. All this challenge makes you look at your ecosystem, and there is a lot of things like providers. I'm mentioning here some of the ones we are working with, some also technical centers like CEA, and they will explain it to you in a moment. Some academics also, some of them have a very technical culture that can help you. Ergonomists, as I said, ergonomy is a key point for operators. Integrators, because the integrators have already, maybe they have already done this kind of job for other companies. And of course, your team and internal resources. Let's leave the floor for Catherine, for her to speak about what can it be to work with the R&D Center.
Thank you, Max. So okay, thank you. So I will give you some part of experience that we have at CEA working on a cobotics project for industry. So why CEA is working on these cobotics and interactive robotics? In fact, this comes back from our historical activities, where CEA has started during the 60s with a manipulator to work in a nuclear environment. So we had quite a great experience, and in the years of 2000 we start working already in cobotics. In the same time, we were transferring a lot of technology to the industry for telerobotics. So especially telerobotics with force feedback. So that means we have worked a lot on force control robotics. And also with telerobotics, so you see in the years we just replace mechanical coupling by computer coupling. And to that, quite early, we also added working on computer-aided assistance system. So that means we would mix with modeling the environment and giving some even physical help to the operator, like kind of virtual guides or obstacle avoidance. And so we have a quite focus on having the human in the loop and not being completely, not working too much on complete automation. So well, we have a transfer so to EasyBo that just speak. So I put the date of the start of EasyBo already 4 or 5 years ago. And we also have another older spin-off that was working on the master arm, so haptic interface, which is still also force control. So I will just give you an example of how we could address a cobotic project. So when you go to a research center like CEA, we take project where there is some difficulties that was not easy to address with the current state of the art and with the current industry. So this project was proposed by or submitted to us by a Technip industry. These are they are manufacturing flexible pipes for their offshore oil platforms, so to transport oil and gas. So these pipes are really getting high pressure, high load, and the quality of manufacturing them is very important. We work with them on a specific operation that the pipes are armored with a metallic thread or a kind of wire, which are quite big for for thread, but they call them like that, and they want them along the pipe. So it's a really, and then they have to do some connection, and for the connection they need to unfold this thread and to put back to the connector. So it's really an important process. They were doing that by hand, and there is a really quality risk, quality issues at that part. If they miss, if they deteriorate some of the thread, it could be for after a few years of using the pipes some damage, which has a very high cost. In addition, so they need workers are really skilled to do this job, and it's a very heavy job. So they have tried for years to automate, to build a machine to do that, and they never succeed. So this was really the perfect project for us, knowing that there is this kind of trouble, and in addition, it's really needing. So we start with starting with to ask the question how the manual process is working, because very often when you have a manual job, not everything is written. Of course, they know how it's good, they can check the quality, but exactly what is the gesture, how to do it is not that known, and because it's not automated. So for that project, we have to do some motion capture with the operators to check what kind of trajectory they were doing when bending the thread in order not to deteriorate it. We did also some force measurement. We did also some measurement on the thread themselves for their mechanical properties. So, and for instance, in the manual process, we find that you could go up to 25 kilogram force pushing. And the trajectories are quite complex just for turning the thread. So then in the second part, we had this conceptual design. So how to design a system. So you will see it looks not really completely to a robot. It's like a special machinery. The principle is that the operator will guide, but the machinery at some point will amplify the effort. So to do that, I will not explain all in detail how it's working, but after the conceptual design, then we had to do a lot of simulation, but the simulation was not only for us to check is it going to work. We also involve the user, so involve them the sooner as possible. So they came to our lab, and we had some digital mock-up. Well, this was quite luxurious. Now we are having more cheaper system with new technology, but really to simulate and to let the operator try how the machine is going to work. So this was very important in the design of the machine. And after that, we have to do a prototype. This is a special case because the prototype machine is the final machine. So we work with an integrator. At that stage, of course, we have to really assess before manufacturing the machine to really assess the safety. So this was done with the integrator, with the user, and we also work with a safety expert at CETIM. And finally, we had the test with the operators inside the lab, but with like almost final machine. So this part was also important to do some tuning, improve some things in the behavior, and also in the documentation. And then this in this project, finally, the machine has been put in the factory and is used since now 6 years or 7 years. So that gives you an idea. Of course, we deal with very different projects. So in our lab, we have different like model of collaboration. Sometimes we can do proof of concept. So of course, we don't want to do something that an integrator can easily do, but sometimes you need like a fast project. So in that case, we will use existing technology. Very often you could have also a mix of technology, so a new technology from our lab and an existing technology, for instance, existing robot or things like that. And we can go to a much more deeper relationship, and also collaborative project like Kibotics is a project. And in collaborative projects, of course, you have to compete usually to get the funding, but it's also a way to work on some use cases for the industry. And we also work in a relationship with a network of platforms. So we are based close to Paris, in Paris-Saclay, but we have also associated technology platforms in the different kind of specialization, especially Metz is with more manufacturing, classical manufacturing, let's say, and Bordeaux is also working a lot with aeronautics and with a large scale system. So also large scale robots. So, and we have some means in for doing prototyping, also for instrumentation. So having a measurement possibly, and especially in safety, we are involved in a European project which will finish this year, but we pursue to continue. So we provide some services and facilities, especially for testing cobot safety, and we want to pursue that with a kind of a network at European level, sharing experience and providing a service in this field. And of course, we also have some people working on integrating as soon as we are doing prototype, which are almost at industry level, not for one tip. So we are doing a lot also of integration. For instance, for nuclear industry, we have worked a lot with a Stobli robot that we put inside the master slave system. So that means a lot of integration. I think, yeah. I am finished. Thank you. So Max, I think you have to follow on.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. I agree on this, all these competencies and possibilities which are very, let's say, rich and useful at CEA. So you should see my screen now, and I will talk about, let's say, just an introduction about EasyBot, because our activity is to bring tools which improve the efficiency of manual tasks. And we go through gain on musculoskeletal musculoskeletal disorders, to improve the quality of traceability. The variability of your applications is managed with our kind of tools. Of course, you will gain in productivity because the operator will be able to do other things while the robot is working, and you transform your staff in cobots pilot, which maybe is more valuable than just an operator. And we have first marketed use about the orbital sending, which is shown here, and maybe we will see a video there. EasyBot designs, manufactures, and integrates its own cobots. This means that we have competencies in all the fields here. We grant the supply chain with industrial constraints. We assemble and tune our systems in our factory, and we do the integrations for the customer needs, which means that we apply the CE marking, which Catherine spoke about a minute before, on the system, and we help you, customers, to put it in your factory and to get it work for the correct objective. At the moment, we produced 32 cobots in production. Most of them, I would say 28 of them, are in factories. And the current or the actual capacity at the moment is 30 units per year. We have nearly 400 square meters and 17 people. Why the EasyBot concept is unique? It's one of the reasons is the patented ball screw and cable actuator instead of gears. This system came from the CEA. The most important concept is about the simplicity of use. Here, it's just for the intuitive programming, we use just two buttons. And we have force limitations, as explained Catherine in the cobot, which is based just on the motor's current. We then worked on the applications or in the customer needs to provide some new features which are useful. But most of them, the more unique concept is about the philosophy. Our philosophy is to have the operator in the loop and to keep it simple for the operator, of course. To keep it simple for the operator is never easy for the system. But it's a success, let's say. For the operators, they are most of them or all of them are satisfied by the ease of use, the uniformity of sending, and the fact that they have no more vibrations or force to apply to the system. Here you have a video for, I don't know if you will see it correctly, but it's present on our YouTube channel, where you see the commissioning of our system. It takes less than 1 minute just to bring the system where you need it. Just bring it in the part of the workshop where you need it. 1 minute later, you can use it directly. First mode I will show here is the assistance mode, where the robot applies the force and the operators guide the sending system on the surface. It doesn't care about what is the direction of the force, what are the parameters. All this is managed by the robot. And by the way, the robot, during these steps, is able to follow what is the movement, and maybe either to use it for traceability or for the replay, because we have also a replay feature. We grant, of course, the quality of the sanding thanks to uniform force applied, always orthogonal to the surface because of the end effector, which has some instruments. And as I said, there is a replay programming, a replay feature. Another mode you can use is the 4 points. It's really easy to show 4 points, not a rectangle, but just 4 points in the space, and then you define a surface. This surface doesn't need to be plan. It can be also with curvatures, and then the robot will process the whole surface doing come and go movements on the surface. You can change the parameters of the process, like the sanding rotation, the sander rotation, or also the speed of the movement. It's really no programming, no new programming, except the knowledge the guys already have. You have some additional examples on our YouTube channel. Do not hesitate in going there. Here's some examples of the factories I said we managed to put a successful system, and it's I won't enter in details like this, but it's let's say on different kind of fields and different sizes of industries. Some of them are big, some others are just let's say ETI, small companies. How to select the projects? Here you have some elements on how we choose the best projects, or we analyze the projects. And it's usually how many people are involved in these tasks. What are the constraints for the operators in terms of, as explained before, the musculoskeletal disorders, but also restrictions, the turnover, difficulties for hiring, the safety and health policies you can find. Then the fluidity. What do you want to do in these tasks, and what are the aims? There is also some constraints on the agility you want. It's really easy to program EasyBot Cobot to process a surface. So if you have, let's say, a lot of parts, it's quite easy to change your products. And of course, we will also look at what are what I explained before, let's say. And we will see, or we have seen, that there is gains even on the kind of consumable or the cycle of the consumables, even with using them with robots with much more forces than operators. And of course, I said last but not the least, the return on investment, because we always finish in the accounting department, and we have to justify more this return on investment. Of course, there is gains on productivity, and here are some of the main facts that bring productivity and contribute to the return. Of the meeting, I won't enter in too much investment, as it's nearly the end of March in these details, but you can ask them or contact us after. There is also the human resources impact because of the sick leaves, the absenteeism, the job attractiveness, and all the things you may have linked with human resources. The resilience, and it means that you will be able to produce on a large variety of parts. You will have the operator in the loop, which means that he will manage, or he will be able to manage any failure that can occur without stopping the whole production cycle. And you still have the possibility to go to manual process as your operator is still present. And of course, the quality parameters, because we are not necessarily better than operators. Operators can do a very, very good job, but we are constant in quality, which means that you don't need as much control as manual operations. You can also manage the scraps and, of course, the parallel task. If your operator is only programming the robot, he can do other things with higher added values while the robot is working. And of course, there is also a return on investment about the image, and it can be like the innovations, but also to produce locally instead of abroad. And ethics, let's say, it's about what are the working conditions when they are produced abroad? Is it a modern slavery, child labor, and things like that? You will be able to produce near you. We have, let's say, a very innovative business model where we bring customers confidence, and it goes through a proof of concept based on the process, and we will check that we achieve the quality required. We validate also the operator's acceptance, and we prepare the risk analysis. Then we propose also, once the proof of concept is okay, the short-term rental. It allows the evaluation of the system on a more long period. Like, for example, usually it's 2 to 4 months renewable, and it comes to 5 kilo euros per month. I didn't spoke about the prices for the proof of concept, but usually we are, depending on the complexity, we are from 7 to 25 kilo euros to bring a proof of concepts on your factory. Short-term rental, it's a commissioning at your factory, and then you have the system to evaluate it in real conditions for 2 to 4 months. And of course, you can buy the turnkey solution with the end effector you need, the risk analysis and the certification, of course, maybe some customized scenario for your needs, and of course, support and on-site commissioning. Thank you for that. I will leave now Leila maybe speak about Kybotics.
Yes, thank you, Max.
It's nearly 5.
Yes, I will just go quickly in the conclusion. So yes, thanks to Catherine and Max for this very clear introduction to the definition of a Kybotic project, and especially the going through all the steps, proof of concepts, rental, and investment. To all the attendees that are hearing this, do not hesitate to take part to the second part of the webinar on the 28th of October. It will deal with very concrete use cases, and it will be the occasion to see the results of all the, let's say, the guidelines that were detailed today. And as we are a bit short on time, I will proceed on the question that were asked. They were very interesting ones. Yes, so Catherine and I will activate my camera. So Catherine and Max, do not hesitate to reply questions. So very interesting one. Yes, it's about the topic Catherine detailed, and it was also a bit of my question. There were a lot of normative systems. I mean, the ISO system, we have the machinery directive, the safety standards. Could you explain how you can merge safety constraints from European Union, France, US, in spite that the activity may be run in France, for example? How do you manage to combine all these constraints during a collaborative project?
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know much the US system, but yeah, for Europe, it's clearly machinery directive is common for everybody, or there is really very small detailed change between some countries. And but for when you are in the manufacturing field, industrial robotics, including some of the collaborative robotics application, then you can rely on the ISO standard, which is used also by US and by Europe. So it's yeah, but even in the ISO, it's also written always you have to do a risk analysis, and that is really the same, I think, in every country. So it's just that the standards are not mandatory. It could happen in some case. For instance, now it will change, but in the original standard for industrial robotics, as soon as you were for hand guiding, you would need to have a 3-position safety handle, which is quite unergonomic in a way. For instance, when you see EasyBot robot, you want to move it by hand. It's much more easy. It's even less risky than having one hand on the robot and one hand on a safety handle. So these kind of things are evolving in the standards. In some conditions, the standard would say, okay, there are conditions where you can do without, but there is some period where you may realize that what is in the standard is not applicable for your case. So it's not an extreme problem. It's just that it's, of course, put you on a non-confident position. That means you have to really be able to explain why and how is your risk analysis and what other means you use to ensure safety. So it's not that rigid that you could think. Yeah.
Thank you. And my question was a bit oriented to the future. Do you think that one day this rule will be, I don't know, merged, unificated in some kind of generic guidelines, or will it be splitted like today?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I know for Europe, it's already quite harmonized with the harmonized standard and the machinery directive, and just the change now at European level that it will becomes a regulation. So it will not be very, very different, but with the directive, each country can make his own version with a little bit of difference. So now for machinery, in a few years, it will be everybody will have the same version. But really at international level, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Very instructive feedback. There was a question dealing with the example you showed, Max. So it was very clear and interesting to see the distinctive features of EasyBot cobots. I mean, the innovative mechanics with the ball screws, the motor current feedback, and so on. The question is, what is the maximum force that we can apply when we are sanding?
So in this sanding system, which is the currently sold system, we can have 100 newtons, 10 kilograms of force on all situations, all directions. And at the moment, we are preparing the next generation cobot, the base of our system, which will be able to go higher. At the moment, there is a prototype which is assembled at CEA, which goes at 350 newtons, 35 kilograms, at more than 2 meters. It should be available at beginning of next year for the first proof of concepts. And we have also a prototype which is a bit shorter, 1.60 meters, like our product, which is already also able to produce more than 10 kilograms. But it's only for prototyping. So the system, official one, sold, it's 100 newtons, all directions.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so yes, as we are, yes, we exceeded a little bit the provisional time. I would like to thank all the attendees of today, and also the very interesting question we had, and also a big thanks to our speakers, expert from today. Thank you very much, and I hope that we can see you also during the second webinar. I think the speaker maybe will change a little bit, but I am pretty confident on the fact that the content will remain as interesting as we had today. And yes, in case of you have any questions about the project, you have, I am sharing my screen. You have the links of the LinkedIn page of the project. Also, you have my email, so do not hesitate to contact me. And I can also make a contact with both Catherine and Max if you have more specific demands concerning this kind of project. So what I propose now is to conclude the webinar. Thank you very much. And let's meet on the 28th October and have a nice evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. See you
Bye.
soon.
Bye.
See you soon.